It is actually a film that is quite hard to describe what it's about, but I can tell you that the origin of the project actually started with that a friend of me and we created a symbolic place that is like a white marked square where we should be reminded of our role as fellow human beings. It should be a place where we are reminded of humanistic values. And it was something that was or is comparable with a pedestrian crossing. You know, with a couple of lines in the streets, we have made a super strong agreement that the car drivers should be careful with the pedestrians. And this was basically the idea with the square also. We should just make a white marked square where we are making a new social contract in between human beings in a city or citizens of a city. And I think that the thematic of the film is about responsibility, it's about trust, it's about where are the borders of our responsibility. Is it within the land that we own, the apartment, or the borders of the country, or so on? So trying to create awareness around humanistic values, basically, and how we deal with them in our time. I really didn't think that I needed to balance it. I was thinking that I should be as wild as possible and as satirical as possible, because I think that Michael Haneke said that you can't do anything else but a farce today. You can't deal with any other genre than farce. And I agree with him. You know, if you look at the contemporary time that we are living in, it's hard to make a satire about that at the time, because it's more satirical than you can, imagine or have a fantasy or if you're going to create a fiction. Most of the examples that is taking place in the film is actually either something that I have heard of that happened to friends of mine or myself, or that are examples that have happened in the contemporary art scene. And I mean, I'm inspired of, for example, a director like Buñuel. And I mean, I think that the best film title in film history so far is The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie. And if you look at the content of that film, it's like a group of people that is trying to eat dinner and they are always interrupted. It's completely bizarre. It's so over the top. And if you would ask him, how did you balance the film? I don't think you would ask him that. But when he is pushing it that far, he also creates questions about the time that we are living in, and we have to ask questions about ourselves, at least in the way that he's directing it, because I think he managed to reflect our contemporary time in his fiction. I think it was important to create a very exciting and wild movie, and that there should be no contradiction that I'm dealing with a topic that I think is important, and at the same time doing it in a very wild and exciting way. I think that is really a big cause of Claes Bang, the actor that have been playing this character. You know that he always stays true to the situations and the scenes that he's acting in a way that, is it possible for me to do this as a human being myself? And if it's not possible for him to do it, then we have detected a problem with the scene. And then we have to change the setup of the scene so it becomes possible to do these sometimes stupid things. Because if you have a setup that is constructed in a certain way, almost any of us can do really, really stupid things. I'm very inspired of sociology, and I think that sociology have a certain kind of way of looking at human being when we fail, and do it in a very forgiving way. So sociology and sociological experiments is like interest. We fail here. We don't manage to live up to our ideals, and why do we do like that? And looks at this from a very behavioristic point of view, instead of putting guilt into the individual. And if you look at like the normal way of telling a feature film, if you look at the Anglo-Saxon tradition of telling a feature film, we always have a protagonist and an antagonist. And the protagonist is the one that is doing the right things, and the antagonist is the one that is like the bad guy. And it's a very simple way of describing life. And I think that the aim for me is always to create situations that is almost like a sociological experiment where I can identify with, oh my God, I would also behave like this in this situation. And maybe that's the approach that makes even the most stupid actions in the film at least a little bit believable. I think these are questions that we are dealing with all over the world. I think that like these humanistic values that I think the Square is dealing with is something that human beings have been dealing with since the start of the first civilization. I think also that, when I'm developing the script, I love to talk about the script. And I talk about the script to people all over the world. When I'm talking about it, then I can see if the content is communicating or not. And you can find a way of like how to tell the content so it communicates. So it's a way, for me, it's a research period when I'm trying out how should I talk about this content. And it also gives me knowledge about how I should direct the scenes. So the scenes is communicating. So maybe it's also a little bit because of that I do this kind of preparation before I start writing the script. And also then I think that the film in its core, at least if I succeed what I want to succeed with, it has a behavioristic approach. So it's rather looking at human being and how we behave than a specific Scandinavian guy. I think it's great. Since I really didn't want to have any, contradiction in doing a film that is wild and exciting and funny, but dealing with an important topic. And if you look at European Film Award, that is of course much more connected to like the European tradition of movie making with the auteur that is dealing with content that is trying to highlight something in contemporary society. Then that prize, of course, for Best Picture is going to a movie that is dealing with this kind of content. So I'm super happy that actually the film is nominated in both categories.